Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I am Amy Collins. I am the creator and founder of Master Brides. We are an online subscription-based planning program for brides who like to plan their weddings, but want to make sure that it is done in a way that they can hand it off and enjoy their wedding in first person. I am so excited that you decided to join us this week, not only on the podcast, but for those of you watching on the vlog. I am so excited to bring on this week's guest. Her name is Grace Norris, and she is a doll. Like, honestly, one of those people that you have a conversation with and you walk away thinking, okay, this person could be my best friend. Now, in all honesty, she is one of my best friends. I feel like this quarter, when we batch all of these different podcast episodes, that I'm having a lot of friends. So I'm having a lot of fun this quarter, and I hope you experience that when you're watching and you're listening alongside. Grace is one of my dearest friends, and so when I asked her to be a part of the podcast, she of course said yes and wanted to be a part of it. She's heard so much about Master Brides and what we're bringing forward. She's been a part of the entire creation process. And so she is excited to see it come forward and to kind of launch into this next section of where we're going next. So without further ado, please help me welcome Grace. Hey, Grace. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you. For those of you who are joining us on the video blog, obviously you can see the lovely Grace Norris sitting there, the beautiful flag behind her. Her husband and my husband are both in law enforcement, and so you can see the very proud blue line there. Grace also works for the Sheriff's Department. Grace, want to tell a little bit about what you do professionally?
Sure. I work in our crime prevention unit, so I get to do all of our outreach. I get to do a lot of our public information and education programs, so a lot of the fun stuff, law enforcement.
Basically,
Actually,
she gets to sit in front of yeah, I was like, she gets to sit in front of the camera, so she does this on a regular basis. I was joking with her before we came on. Gosh, you do this all the time. I do a little intimidating. She's like their press girl, so always looking camera ready for sure.
Good to always talk about something positive, not have
Right?
a negative story to talk about.
Yeah, crime prevention in a positive way.
Yes.
Okay, so we're excited to have you here. Those of you listening, Grace is honestly, one of my closest friends. I feel like I've gotten all my close friends that I'm putting on this show, like, kind of going forward right now. It's kind of fun. Like, this batch has been people I know very closely, so it kind of feels like home to me. But Grace and I have been friends for quite a few years here. She's just about to have a baby. Her and Kevin are expecting. Yay. We're very excited, doing a baby shower in 2 weeks. But we have brought Grace on today for a couple reasons. First of all, like I said, she's one of my good friends. But second of all, Grace planned her wedding in 3 months. And I know there's a lot of you listening and watching us who, you may have gotten engaged, maybe engaged on kind of like that off season. And so you're going to try to like slam it into the next wedding season. And that's a little bit how Grace and Kevin did it. So before we get started, first of all, tell us, how did you get engaged?
Sure. So we were actually on vacation together. We went to Malaysia to this small island called Langkawi. It's beautiful if anyone ever wants a tropical vacation that's pretty affordable and kind of different. So we had just gotten there, and it was our first morning. And we woke up super early because we were confused on the time difference. And we went and hung out by the beach. Kevin was kind of like, oh, I'll go get some lawn chairs set up for us because we could just walk right down to the water. And you can go ahead and get in your swimsuit and get all ready for the day. And so I go and meet him down there, and we're just relaxing and just enjoying the view. And then I noticed that there's a bottle kind of off in the distance in the sand. And so I'm like, oh, I think there's a message in that bottle. And I'm totally oblivious at this point. I mean, we have traveled about 26 hours to get to the other side of the world. I thought there's no way that this man brought a ring all the way to Malaysia. So was not expecting to get engaged.
Especially
Yes. And so that was the farthest thing from my mind. And so I'm like, let's go check it out. And he's like, okay. So we go and look.
Okay.
I know, he's trying to be so casual, which he's actually really good at. And so we get the bottle, and I immediately poke the letter all the way down into it so I can't get it. Because yeah, just being clumsy. And so Kevin's like, should we break the bottle? Yeah, let's do it. And so we go and break it and pull the letter out, and we go and sit down, and he's like, well, why don't you read it? Still at this point, totally oblivious. I thought that this was like another couple had come and thought it would be really romantic to throw a letter in the ocean. And so I go and I'm reading it, and I still don't know that he's proposing until I get to the very bottom of the letter and I see my name. And even then I had kind of seen my name coming up, but with a name like Grace, it's like, oh, could be the virtue.
Yeah.
And so we got engaged. He asked, and I was so excited.
Oh my God.
The rest of the vacation just turned into a big celebration. We met a couple that took some photos for us that ended up throwing us an engagement party that night. Total strangers.
That's so cute.
So yeah, it was amazing. It was perfect.
That is funny. And for those of you also listening, watching, this is actually when I met Grace. Was like literally the week you guys returned.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at the cookout, and Doug and Kevin, my husband Doug and Kevin are friends on the force. And so Doug introduced me to them, and I saw Grace's ring, and of course, me being a wedding planner, oh, ring, like all excited. I mean, it was very shortly after that, I know, because you guys were just starting to think about planning. And I remember asking, I will remember this, and I'm like, oh, so when are you guys going to get married? And what was this, May, maybe?
Yeah, we got engaged in May.
Yeah, so May, because and you go September, and I was like, how are you gonna do like this year? And I was like, whoa. And even for me, it's a whoa. And I'll never forget that. And you're like so confident about it. You're like, oh yeah, I got this. And I'm thinking, go for it.
And I think, because I still credit you with part of the reason I had confidence to do it in 4 months, because we knew each other super well, but
no, not at all.
I think at that point, I don't know that I had everything booked.
You didn't. You were going at weekend, I think.
Months. And I was like, okay, a wedding coordinator thinks I could do this in 4 months. And so I was like, let's just do it. Why not?
Once I had a conversation with you, you seemed like confident enough in it that I thought, okay, like, I think she's got this. Like, I think she's going to be okay. And so I just remember being like, okay, if she falls apart and needs to come help, I can always rescue her. But she didn't. And that's the good thing. So you guys got married at Pear Valley, which is a winery in Paso. Is it in Paso? Okay, Paso Robles in California. Which for those of you who are not familiar with Paso, I encourage you, if you're looking at a California wedding, it is a very cool space. I mean, that whole area is just, first of all, it's up and coming. It has some of the best wines. They're getting the craziest wine ratings in the country. It's like the fastest growing, I think, wine area in the country or world or something. They are killing it. So Grace was a trendsetter by having her wedding there back on September 19th, 2015.
Yeah, we just had our 4-year anniversary.
Crazy. I know. They are 2 days off, my husband and I. And so we used to, before we moved, we celebrated on the day off.
Yep.
So that was always fun. Miss you guys on that. So they had 135 guests, and they were engaged a total of 4 months and planned in 3. So let's talk high level on this for our brides that are thinking, okay, you know, if there was one thing, and I know there's not one thing, but if there's some things off the top of your mind that you can think of that really helped you like feel confident, like knowing I did this, this, and this, and then I'm going to be okay. Like, were there some things that you needed to do right away that made you feel that way?
For me, it was confidence in the vendors that I chose. I knew that I didn't have a lot of time to plan myself, and I couldn't put myself in the situation where I was micromanaging all of my vendors because I didn't have time. And so it was picking people that I trusted, and then just trusting them the day of that they were going to do a fabulous job. So our photographer, we hired Eli Roberts, and he was amazing. I didn't have to come up with a whole list of every photo that I wanted, because looking through his wedding photos consistently, it's like, okay, he knows what he's doing. He gets the shots.
Yeah.
Same with our flowers, our venue. We chose a beautiful place, so we didn't need to put decorations in every corner because there were roses and fountains, and it was already beautiful.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was just being confident in the people that I was hiring to help make my day special, and then just letting it go from there and just trusting that they had my back.
Did you feel that when you picked your venue, so what did you book first? Did you book venue first?
Yes.
Okay. So important thing, I say this a lot on this show. I say it a lot on my lives. Make sure you know your budget, where you're getting married, and what your guest count is. Because if you don't know those three things, it's kind of difficult. Don't buy your dress first. Um, so, right? I can't tell you how many people said yes to the dress and you don't have a venue. That is probably not going to be smart. Murphy's Law states you will end up on a beach when you're in a ball gown. It's just the way that ends up.
Especially if you're
But
only giving yourself 4 months,
right?
because
Exactly.
a lot of places book up.
Exactly. So with picking Pear Valley, obviously you said it was beautiful. It was, did you find when you were booking vendors that you were willing to slide a little bit on price for the confidence or the experience of those vendors because you knew you had a shortened time frame?
I did. We didn't have the luxury of shopping around and choosing between 30 different vendors that were available that day that were all high quality. Although we do have a ton of high quality vendors on the Central Coast, people book up. And so we had our date in mind. And then once we were able to find people that were available, it was, you're going to be paying a little bit more for someone who is fully capable of handling the entire day, and that doesn't need that micromanaging.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we really try to stress to brides is, if you are doing something fast, know that you may be not saving money in the end, because yeah, sometimes you can save money because people are willing to cut you a deal because they don't have that date booked, right? So it can work both ways. But then there's the other aspect of, you don't have as many options to pick from. So you may be, left without the best vendors available, or, just being, or you may have to source from different areas, pulling in from a totally different area to get some of higher caliber. So just keep that in mind when you are planning. The faster you plan, sometimes you have to pay for convenience because of that, because it can get stressful. I know you and I talked offline about this a little bit, but you kept your wedding pretty simple. And what was your thought process on that?
It was, again, just wanting to just trust in the environment that we knew was already going to be there at Pear Valley. We were bringing in just a ton of joy with all of our family and friends. We had probably 30 kids there. So we knew it wasn't going to be a dull time. We hired a fun DJ. We invested in beautiful flowers. And so it's just, we had the confidence that it was going to turn out gorgeous. We didn't feel the need to add a ton of little details, just because we knew with the people that were coming and with what was already there that it was going to be beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that, and I talk about this, but chain of command, right? One little item that you have has to do so many different touches. Grace actually does weddings with me off and on, and so she knows what I'm talking about, right? People will just put up a sign and say, here's this sign, and you're like, oh my gosh, where does this go? Like, there's so many little things. And so when you're planning a fast wedding, or as far as your timeline, making sure that chain of command is actually delineated out and like associate, like that's hard. It's just a lot of time. It's a lot of stress. It's where I tend to see everyone stresses out at the end, like, oh, this great idea in Pinterest, but then I forgot the ladder, and we're scrambling around the day of looking for a ladder. So I think, when you said I had the confidence to do this in 3 months, I think it's also, you set the expectation that you couldn't have every little thing maybe you wanted, or every little, fun knick-knacky detail that you've seen on Pinterest.
Yeah.
because, there's just not a lot of time, especially when you're working.
Yeah. And part of it was being flexible. We had up until the day before for our rehearsal, my plan was to have this wagon that was going to be pulled down the aisle with our two youngest nieces. Because we had, Kevin and I both had nieces that were about 1 at the time. Like, oh, we're going to put bumbos and lace and it's going to be so beautiful. And we got the wagon, we brought it over from Fresno. And it wasn't happening. I didn't have the lace. There was this huge hill that you had to climb up to get to the actual wedding site. And it was just like, you know what? I just want them to go down the aisle. So mom and dad ended up carrying them down the aisle. And it was totally fine. And we were flexible with it. But up until the day before, it was like, yeah, I think we're going to do this wagon thing. And so you have to maintain a level of flexibility.
I'm surprised you didn't have the lace. Grace, you're like one of the craftiest people I know. Like, you and your craft. I'm surprised you didn't have like a mound of it in your back. We're basically grandmas, for those of you who don't know us. I don't think there's anyone who likes to garage sale more than Amy. Yes. And for my grandma chair behind me, like, we love all things grandma. And so I just laugh because you think you'd have all the lace in the world hidden somewhere because, we found it at a garage sale. That's fine. So we got engaged and married in 3 months. What was your plan? I know you had a day of planner.
Yes.
What was her greatest role for you? Like, how early did she come into the process? What were some of the things that that you wouldn't have been able to do had you not had her?
Yeah, that was huge. Just there were a lot of things I didn't know that I needed to know because, for most of us, we don't have a lot of weddings. So this was obviously, our one wedding. And this was before I had helped with other weddings before. And so I just had a lot of things that I was naive to. So she came and sat with us and was able to run through a lot of those things that I'd never thought of. Were there family dynamics that I should be thinking of? Things like, it was over 100 degrees on our wedding day. It's a little warm here in September, especially in our North County. And so I had family members that weren't going to be able to be up at the wedding site because there was no shade. And so figuring out a plan for them where they could wait. Things like coordinating our millions of nieces and nephews that we needed to have in the wedding. We ended up having, I think it was 11 at the time. Our family has only grown since then. But we had 11 nieces and nephews that were in our actual wedding party. So figuring out how to coordinate that, because for me, it was just important to get everyone down the aisle. Right. But from a planning perspective, that can be pretty challenging when you're talking 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. And she was just a champ at reining everybody in and getting us all on the same page.
Nice. I know. I think, I always joke, 4 steps to any wedding: planning and designing, booking your vendors, planning your wedding, and then executing it. And I think so many times people think, oh, well, I booked my vendors and I planned my wedding. I'm like, no, you booked your vendors. Now you get to plan your wedding. And planning are those little things like, how are they going to walk down the aisle? What about your family? Can they sit up there? Can they not? Are we making sure that the in and the outs of vendors are all in alignment with the timeline that you have? I mean, I think that's in itself, if there's any stress I feel like I see on these bridal blogs, it's, oh my gosh, how do I actually create a good wedding day timeline? And I see people give these timelines thinking they're giving these really great ones, and they are from a cryptic perspective. They're very outlined, but it's like, whoa, like an actual timeline has every in and out of every single thing. It's, all the transitions that happen. And I think unless you've done that before, and many times, multiple times, you will never understand those transitions that are happening in the back. And think about it. And, I say this over and over again, that you are dealing with artistic personalities that are not high-level communicators, that are coming together on one day, usually as strangers. Most vendors don't actually know each other, especially someplace on the Central Coast where you have hundreds of different kinds of vendors. You may never work a wedding together again, even if you are a big professional in the area. And you want them to perfectly communicate in an 8-hour day and not anything go wrong. It's like statistically impossible. So really just having, that planner in place to execute so that you were able to live your day in first person, you know, and really enjoy your day, I think is important. And I think, I mean, when you look at your photos, like you lived in first person, you loved your wedding day. When you talk about your wedding day, I feel like you love it. Am I crazy for thinking that?
Best day ever.
Right?
Still best day of my life.
About to hopefully get shot up by a
we'll
maybe best day ever.
Could very well be.
Let's hope for your sake. No, so tell our listeners, even though you have a planner, and I always love this, there's always something going to go wrong. That's going to go wrong. And to be mindful of that, I think is important. I think so many times people say, well, I hired a planner and this went wrong and this went wrong. Okay, listen, we're not superhuman either. Okay. Like, just think of a couple things went wrong with a professional. Just think of how many things would have gone wrong without one. Okay. So you had a coordinator, but what was the one thing that didn't happen correctly in your wedding?
So we had a few little snafus, but they were all pretty small. Probably the biggest one. And at the end of the day, I don't think anyone cares or remembers, but none of our napkins made it on the tables. And so this was an area actually where I cheaped out a little bit, because it was actually cheaper to purchase napkins than it was to rent them.
Yep.
And so I bought my own, and for anyone who hasn't bought their own linen napkins, they are a pain to try and press. They just like are wrinkly messes. And so like 2 nights before, we were still trying to iron out these napkins, and I had them in a box, and they didn't make it onto the tables, which I probably wouldn't have even noticed because I was just on cloud 9. But we ended up having a few guests asking if napkins were available during dinner. And so my day of coordinator just very graciously went around and individually handed out napkins to everyone. And it worked out, you know, and they were a little wrinkly, but that was my fault because that was where I saved a few dollars. So I would.
Okay, so let's talk about that. In hindsight, would you have saved a few dollars?
Yes, I would have. No, I would have rented the napkins.
Yeah, rented napkins, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I don't think it was that big of a cost difference. And I just figured, oh, then I'll have these napkins I can use whenever, which I've used them maybe once or twice, but
yeah, it was pull those out for the shower.
I'm like trying to steam the napkins. I'm trying to like lay books on them, just flatten them.
And let's actually talk about that for a second, because I think this is actually a really good learning example for our listeners and our watchers. Linens. Let's talk about linens, because I feel like this is actually an area where brides can save a lot of money is on linens. Mm-hmm. By purchasing your own. Linens are freaking expensive. They are so expensive. And I know a lot of people will say, like, I'll buy my own linens, but they just know they come wrinkly. Yeah. They do not press easily. I mean, I've got some for my tables that I use at conventions and stuff. They are a beast, dude. Katie and I at the last one were sitting there like steaming it, and I would sit there and hold it, and she'd hold it. I mean, our booth took like, I think, an hour and a half to set up, and I'm pretty sure 40 minutes of that was steaming. One that never looked right at the end of the day. And they just don't. And so understand, if you do your own linens, you need a serious pressing machine and serious amounts of time, and understand most of the time that does not play out well, because you need to get those done. People are always leaving that to the last minute. I always see this. Like they show, trust me, we don't even accept this from brides anymore that try to DIY their own linens, because they show up in the boxes still. Like, here's your linens. And I'm like, oh, no. You know what I mean? And after years of doing that, they're just so wrinkly. So, you know, if you are thinking about DIYing your own linens, I would just encourage each of you to really think hard about that. Unless you are saving upwards of half the price, you know, and just understand you got to have someone, you know, doing all of the manpower behind that. And then you also have to understand that if you rent your linens, and this could be actually why your linens didn't get out on the table. If you rent linens, then your catering staff is not contractually obligated to put them out. So that's a lot of times where it happens, because they'll say, well, we don't have to drop the linens. That's not a part of our contract. Because that's a lot of work to actually drop linens and put the tableware down. And that's another thing. A lot of time people will buy their own tableware because it's cheaper. And they'll say, well, why do I have to pay $1.25 to rent a plate? I can buy it for $1 at the dollar store. Okay, but you're also dealing with manpower to get it there, the washing and the cleaning, and all these other removal type of and entrance type of, things that have to happen. And so I don't think people think that all the way through. You're lucky you just had napkins.
Yeah.
But this tends to be a thing where brides on a budget will try to save money on those linens. And I do think linens look better than anything on the tables, and don't skimp out on that. But just really think about what that looks like from the manpower perspective. Majority of people will resell their linens. So understand you probably will not use them for years and years and years to come. And I don't think, unless you're throwing parties for 135 people on a regular basis, you'll probably use a total of 20 napkins in your life. So just go ahead and sell those right away. I'll help you sell yours, Grace, when we get there.
Okay. My husband would love that.
Right? Get it out of the garage. So, but yeah, that's actually a really good learning lesson, I think, for a lot of brides, because I don't think people actually, again, think the chain of command all the way through, right? From start to finish. So they just look at the price and think, okay, well, I'm going to do it cheaper. Cheaper isn't always better if you don't have the manpower behind it. So just thinking through that, that's why I wanted Grace to bring that forward, because I think, this is something that happens all the time. Also flowers, right? Same kind of thing, like DIYing flowers. And that can always be, again, one of those really big cost savers that in the end, the manpower sometimes isn't worth it. So, okay. So what else, if you could think of one thing that is like a memory for you, that's like your best memory of the day, what would you say that it is?
The whole day was amazing. I think when I think about our wedding, though, I think what first comes into mind is just walking up that hill. 'Cause like I said, the actual wedding site was kind of on the top of this little mound, so you had to walk upstairs to get to it. But just walking up and seeing my future husband waiting for me at the end of the aisle, we didn't do a first lick. So that was the first time.
Oh, you didn't? I didn't know that.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Nope. I did not.
Close your ears. Don't listen to this.
It was not for me, but I know that works well for a lot of people. But seeing him for the first time and then seeing all of our family and friends on either side and just like our family up at the front, I don't know. I still get emotional thinking about it. It was just so cool to see all the support and love that we just had surrounding us. And then it was a pretty short ceremony. Like I said, I think it was like 103 that day. So I could have been up there for an hour, but my guests were ready to get the party started. So just having that ceremony, one of the first things that we did together was take communion, which was really special. And yeah, I couldn't believe the amount of just love I felt towards Kevin in that moment. And just, I just kept looking out. There's a lot of photos of me looking out at our guests because it was so powerful having all these people that we loved so much that were just surrounding us that day.
It's funny when I ask brides that question, so many of them, that's like a memory for them. Not necessarily walking up the aisle, because most people actually don't do a first lick or do a first lick these days. So they don't get that moment. But it's like when they walk into the reception and they announce them and they just like take it all in. It's always that there's some big moment where they like see the whole thing, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is everybody we love, like in a room celebrating our love. And there's just something like, I don't know, there's pure. It's funny, again, for those who may be new listening and haven't heard me say this, I've done this for 17 years, a very long time. Grace can attest to this. I still cry every time one of our brides walks down an aisle. I cry on commercials about brides. There is just something, and it doesn't matter if they've had a first look or they haven't had a first look. There's just something about that moment when I'm right there in that moment before she walks out, and brides look at me, and there's just this click of like, oh my gosh, it's happening. So all that moment and all that lead up, like I kind of get that intimacy with them in that moment before. And it's just the coolest thing ever. And I'm like a basket case as they like walk down the aisle. It's just so ridiculous how much I cry. And my staff all the time is like, are you crying? Oh yes. Don't worry. We love our brides that much. Cry on your wedding day. But there's just something, I don't know, there's something like pure about that moment, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? You can't, it's not going to happen again. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you can't recreate that moment where everyone turns around and sees the bride. It's just like, oh, great.
It's magic. It's
You can see
something
why
else.
dads get so worked up about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Well, Grace, is there anything else that you want our listeners or viewers to know, or any words of wisdom you can give to our brides as they embark on this planning adventure themselves?
I just wish everyone luck. And like I said, just pick people that you trust and then trust them. It's not just getting the people that you know are good at it, but actually trust them once you've hired them, that they are experts on this. You are not an expert, chances are. And so trust their opinions, be flexible. And, I liked the short engagement. It worked well for me. I'm a procrastinator. So if I had done it longer, I probably still would have only planned in the last 3 months, if I'm being honest with myself. So it is doable for people that want to do it. Just make sure that you are flexible, and that you surround yourself with people that are going to help make your day exactly what you want.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Grace. Loved having you on. And for those of you who want to check out our Master Brides program, it's a program that we have for brides to help them plan their wedding day from start to finish. You get tutorials, you get live trainings, you get to plan with a group of gals that are getting married in the same month you are. It's a really cool program. I encourage you to check it out. It's at masterbrides.com. And we are in full launch mode. So starting with the new engagement season here, we will be putting everybody in their cohorts and helping you plan your wedding. And again, I love weddings. I think everyone who knows me knows how much I love weddings. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this industry, hopefully. But yeah, so I'd love to help you plan your wedding. I will cry when you show me your videos post-event. It's just what I do. And we hope to have you a part of our program. So until next time, bye for now.